I've lost my book. I don't know where it is, whether it's at home or one house apart. Nobody gave you an extra book? They might have fallen on the floor or something?
Morning.
No, huh?
There's a couple sheets of music there if you want to grab some. You're welcome to.
Okay.
Well, you might find it still.
I'm hoping.
Yeah. All right. It's 10, so here we go. This is As the Deer. As the deer panteth for the water, so my soul longeth after you. You alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship you. You alone are my strength, my shield. To you alone may my spirit yield. You alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship you. You're my friend and you are my brother, even though you are a king. I love you more than any other, so much more than anything. You alone are my strength, my shield. To you alone may my spirit yield. You alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship you. I want you more than gold or silver, only you can satisfy. You alone are the real joy giver and the apple of my eye. You alone are my strength, my shield. To you alone may my spirit yield. You alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship you. All right, let's pray. God, we love you from the bottom of our hearts. We ask that as we come together today to study your word, to be in your presence, that you would lead us and guide us, remind us how much you love us, give us a sense of purpose and direction, open our hearts and minds to what you would like to teach us as we enter into this sacred and special season of Lent, contemplating what it means to die, be raised again, to give everything, and to be a conqueror of death. Thank you for being with us today. We pray in your name. Amen.
I love the imagery on that song, As the Deer.
I love that too.
And pictures,
Yeah. Yeah, that's a favorite. All right. Good to see everybody. I think we're going to finish up 10 today. That's
oh, that's too bad. That's my favorite so far.
all right. Favorite so far. So there's some good paragraphs in here. Why don't we? Showing up here. Let me. That's odd. I'm just looking here, and what is showing to those at home. It's not coming through for some reason. All right. Just give me 1 second here for some technical stuff. We've got a couple people watching at home or online, so we want to make sure they can see what we're seeing on the screen. There we go. Okay. We've got a new little system. We went live with it for the first time on Sunday. You may or may not have seen a difference if you're watching online. It looks to me like you might be getting high definition, so maybe the picture's a little bit clearer. Or not. It's coming through a little bit differently. It's going straight to the website, and then from there it goes to YouTube and Facebook. So it's the traffic's a little different. That means I've got to, at least for this morning, I had to kind of make our screen look a little different so I can see your comments. So at least want to say hello to Judy, Maggie, and Paula. They're joining us, and hello to you that are sitting here in person with me. So we're going to start. We've got like about 3 paragraphs left, 2 or 3 paragraphs left in chapter 10, step 10. And somebody tell me what step 10 is, just as a reminder to us. Because I'm not remembering off the top of my head right now.
Continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it.
All right, so we're doing continue to take personal inventory. So if we're going through the steps for the first time, we're taking a moral inventory of ourselves for the first time. We're making a list of the people that our actions and our way of living has affected, how it has affected them. So we're looking at, this is a big step if we're going through this for the first time. We're kind of taking a deep dive. What is it about myself that's kind of out of line with? So here's where doing the moral inventory, we're holding ourselves to some standard, and the standard might vary or change from person to person, or it might vary or change in our own lives. We might start with just whatever we've known as a list of rights and wrongs, wherever we got that from. We may have got that from parents, from the 10 Commandments or Sunday school. We may have got it from our teachers or the police officer that stopped us on the side of the road. Whatever it is that we're getting a kind of a list of rights and wrongs and how well or poorly we've done in regard to those. And then if we engage in a life of faith, usually we're taking a deeper look at that. So it's not just a list of rights and wrongs. Because with a list of rights and wrongs, what we can do is we can switch in, we can move into lawyer mode. All right? And as a lawyer, you can kind of argue your case depending on the circumstances, right? So you always see, if you watch TV and you see a court scene, or you've been a participant in a court scene, you know you've got 2 people that are saying the exact opposites of how the person being accused has related to the law. One is saying they did a horrible, horrible thing, and the other is saying that's not that bad, or they didn't do it, it's somebody else's fault or whatever. So we can, for our own moral lives, if we're examining ourselves, we could switch into lawyer mode. So we're kind of making excuses for why we're doing the way we're doing, justifying our actions, that we might do that. As we get into like a life of faith, one of the things that we're wanting to do is we actually want to turn up our conscience. We turn up the acuity or the sensitivity of our conscience. And so we start incorporating like teachings of Jesus, where Jesus says, you've heard it said, don't murder. agreed, don't murder, but he says, but I want you to look at where murder starts. It starts with where our heart is. It starts with hatred. So if we find hatred growing in our hearts, we need to stop it before it grows into murder, because that's kind of the process. So when we're in a life of faith, we're looking a little bit deeper. We're not just looking from the outside. Did I murder somebody today? No, I didn't. All right, yay. We're not just doing that, but we're looking inside and saying, like, how do I feel about the people around me? Well, that's another story. I may not be crazy about this person or that person. So we're looking a little bit more closely at that. And then we're looking also, if we're looking at not just our moral inventory, the way that we have related to morality or ethics, then we're looking at the impact that we've had on people around us. And as we become more aware, as we grow in our spiritual lives, in our personal lives, what we start to do, hopefully, is become more empathetic and more compassionate. And that means we have a better sense of what other people are experiencing. We're not just focused on me, and my experience, but we're very attuned to the people around us, which means as we start to grow spiritually, we're also realizing the impact that we might have on other people. And hopefully that brings a change to our behavior. So we learn, like, we might change the tone we use when we talk with people. We might change the body language that we use. We might slow down our reactivity to what people. We might tone down our defensiveness. We might do a lot of different things just because we're realizing what an impact that we do have on people around us. And we want people to experience love and life, and we don't want them to experience, some negativity. So
I found the simplest thing right there is to really think about what you think, say, and do that you would desire for yourself is how you do it with another person. So if you choose not to think about a person in a negative way, say something to a person in a negative way, or do something in a negative way to a person that you wouldn't want to have done yourself, that's what you need to address.
mm-hmm. That's in that's the golden rule. That's found in every single major religion has their own wording of the same type of morality. So this is kind of this is one of the ways that we can gauge where we are at in terms of our moral inventory or our impact on others. Is, are we treating others the way we would want to be treated? And then sometimes that's worded in the positive, and sometimes it's worded in the negative. Sometimes it says, do not do unto others the way you don't, or do unto others the way you do want. So we can look at it either way. Either way, it's an encouragement for us to put ourselves in the shoes of someone else as we're going about. So we're doing this inventory. When we get to 10, we're doing personal inventory. So this is not just like a one-time project or a first-time project. With 10, we're turning it into a habit. We're turning it into, and maybe what we do if we're moving it from a project to a habit is maybe we do something like a journal, whether that's literally, writing on paper or, using an electronic device. We may choose different ways of doing it. Maybe you use a whiteboard or a chalkboard, and then you can erase it, so you're not really keeping track of your progress if that's where you need to be. Or you may want to keep progress so you can look back and say, wow, a year ago I was a grade A jerk, and now I'm like, now I'm like not that much of a jerk. So there's progress.
I look at it this way also, that the big sin or the mistake in doing this, in other words, is when the sin or the mistake in doing, when we do this personal inventory, is when we justify our mistakes.
Right.
We make it, in other words, well, if it wasn't for this, I wouldn't be like that. Or if that person hadn't done this, I wouldn't have been like that.
Mm-hmm.
We don't realize that what we're seeing is a reflection of ourselves when we see a negative thing happen. It's how we react to it.
Right.
Otherwise, we get caught up in that negative thing, if that's what we so choose.
Right. Something that Richard Rohr was saying when we're doing personal inventory and when we're making this a habit is this is where he uses the word conscience and consciousness. So what this means is when we're looking at the personal inventory, we might be moving away from really focusing on moral behaviors, because moral behaviors really are more like symptomatic of what's happening more deeply. And if we focus on the symptoms, sometimes that doesn't help us change anything. So, we can be very aware of how and where we keep falling short. I keep losing my temper. I keep, having these bad thoughts about another person. I don't know. We can go through this, but if we realize that those things might be symptomatic of us really truly believing in our identity as a child of God, as a valuable person, as somebody that God is excited about and that is like crazy in love with, we might imagine that and think like, there's no way God's excited about me. There's no way God's really like bothering to pay attention to what I'm doing, or there's no way that God doesn't look at me as something beautiful and creative and full of purpose. Maybe we say, well, probably God feels about me the way that other people have told me they feel about me, and they think that I'm kind of a waste of space and that I'm, a bad person and all this kind of thing. So if in our identity of who we believe that we are, if that is off kilter, if I think I'm a crappy person, guess what I'm going to be? I'm going to live it out because I'm living up to the standard that has been set. If I think I am broken beyond repair and it's kind of hopeless, if we believe that's who we are, we're gonna act that out. We're gonna justify our behaviors. So knowing who we are, that's a core issue. That's not an issue of conscience. That's an issue of consciousness. That's knowing who I really am. Now, that doesn't mean, we used the word perfect last time when we were together. That doesn't mean I don't make mistakes. That doesn't mean I don't have room to grow. We always will have room to grow. Always. And it doesn't really, I think it really helps if we think of personal growth and moral growth as two separate types of things. I think that can be very helpful. So, for example, if we think about seeing kids grow up or remembering how we grew up as kids, right? The way we thought and the way that we acted when we were 8 years old, hopefully is very different from when we were 25 years old. Hopefully we've matured and become more adult-like, and so we're more responsible, we're more thoughtful. There's this process of growth, and we don't think of that as like a moral development. That's just maturity. So there's maturity, but then there also is, sometimes within our lives, we can see a moral growth. Now, we might be able to look at our life and say, when I was 8 years old, I was a good kid and I was nice to everybody. And when I was 25 and a young adult, I was nice to everybody. So maybe in terms of moral growth, I'm kind of the same, which is fine if we're kind of at a good place. But I'm not going to say like, if I say I haven't matured since I was 8 years old to 25, there's a problem. Because so the same goes when we are seeing our consciousness. Our consciousness is related to maturity. And so hopefully we have more wisdom and insight and connection with God. Hopefully we have more of that as time goes on. So that when we were 25 versus when we were 65, hopefully we can say that we have grown in our understanding of life, in our understanding of God, and our understanding of who we are as people. Hopefully there's growth there. And I think in a life of faith, I don't think that ever stops, because what is happening is we're becoming more and more like Christ, is the way that it's described in the New Testament. We're becoming more like God, which means we're growing in our consciousness. And that means, how close am I to being on the same level as God in terms of my consciousness? I've got quite a ways to go. In fact, I might even say I've got an eternity to go, right? Now, conscience might be different, though, because conscience, we should be able to have a very conscientious, morally good person at 5 years old. If you've ever met somebody and say, oh, she's such an angel, a thoughtful 5-year-old, shares with people, or whatever, that exists. You can have a thoughtful teenager. It does exist. There can be people that go through adolescence and all the changes and the craziness doesn't get the better of them, but they become basically they're good people, right? You can have good people that are young adults, middle age, older. You can have in every spectrum, you can have good people, good-hearted people. And then you can also have people that are not good at all. You can have like a really selfish 5-year-old and a really selfish teenager and a really selfish 52-year-old and a really selfish 85-year-old. You know what I mean? So these are two very different things. And I think what we're encouraged to do here is we're kind of encouraged to look at both, but don't confuse the two and think like, because you can have a person that is a morally good person. They're not breaking laws. They're not being horrible to people. But then their maturity may not be that developed. They may not be that wise. They may not be the person you want to go to ask advice, because they don't know. They're kind of ignorant in that regard. So this is in this chapter, when we're talking about personal inventory and moral inventory, maybe we look at those as conscience or consciousness, or maybe we look at it in terms of morality and maturity. They're different things, and we want improvement in both, but don't confuse one with the other.
This has been really, this part I haven't thought about before in this chapter that I find really fascinating. And also in this chapter, I think this is a chapter that says awareness, awareness, awareness. And so like, I hope it's not bragging. I don't think I have much trouble with the moral inventory thing. But the personal inventory, like trying to bring myself more into balance with who God would see me, that takes some awareness. And I had in another group I was in one time, a member said she went to marriage counseling, and the counselor told her that the problem with changing is the people around you are accustomed to who you are. And they will resist that. Not that you were going to become mean or anything, but just the fun-loving person's going to become more serious, things like that. And so I'm trying to picture all of these things, and I'm wondering if I have, just for myself, do I have an awareness of what a Christian woman should act like and be like that's keeping me from being fully authentic?
I like the word authentic. The word authentic is something I think we hear that a lot more. I think that would be related to consciousness, authenticity. Because what happens if you're an authentic person, if your consciousness is more open, you are going to recognize that you have shortcomings, but they're not really moral. They may not be moral shortcomings, but you may have shortcomings. Now, some of this might be related to you didn't have opportunities to develop certain skills, maybe like other people did. So, for example, I have two boys, but they're 14 years apart. So in some ways, it's like they were both only children because they were raised on their own, right? And so there's kind of this stereotype of only children they're different than if you were raised, one of 5 or 10 kids. It's very different. Now, part of that has to do with socialization. So socializing with people that are more on your peer level is something that somebody growing up with a bunch of siblings would have practice of 24/7, whereas somebody who was an only child who's used to relating to people that are much older than them, just used to relating to adults or to being alone, their socialization they're getting a different practice. You might find that the only child, when they're put in situations where they have to relate to adults, they're very much at ease and they're very good at it, whereas the kid that's always around other kids, they're not so great at like relating to adults. But then you do the other thing, you put the only child on the playground and maybe they're a little awkward and they don't, they're not everybody's favorite, whereas the one who is very socialized is something else, So our consciousness might bring awareness to that's how I'm different. And there are certain ways that I guess we're wired some kind of way when we come into this world, but then a lot of our wiring has to do with our experiences. Our experiences change the circuitry up here. They call that neuroplasticity. So when you do certain things on a regular basis, it changes the way your brain, the neurons fire, and they're this is the whole nature versus nurture argument, which essentially says nurture changes nature, right? So when we're becoming more conscious, we may recognize that we've got some shortcomings. Doesn't mean that we're bad. Or it just means there might be some skills that we're just lacking because we didn't have practice of them all this time. And maybe we're going to be kind of behind in those areas. Maybe there's some other things that we are skilled at. Some of the things are just related to personality. You know, the way that we're, some are more introverted and some are more extroverted. And the interesting difference between those two things is an introverted person, when they're with groups of people, it discharges their battery.
Yes.
It makes their battery go down. Whereas the person who's extroverted, when they're with people, it charges their battery and they get more energy. So the introvert gets less energy with people and the extrovert gets those things we can be aware of. And both that and the skills that we have had the opportunity to develop or not, those things are a part of who we are, and it makes us unique and different, but that doesn't make us a good person or a bad person. Just because I'm introverted doesn't mean I'm bad. Just because I was an only child doesn't mean I'm bad. Maybe I find there's differences with that. Maybe I find some people don't really like that about me, or they do like that about me, but that's just kind of what we're dealing with, you know? Now, the morality thing, again, that's something different. So the morality thing would be like, I was an introvert, and I found that I had introverted challenges, the challenges of an introvert in my life. And when I didn't really successfully meet those challenges and I got frustrated, I turned that into horrible behavior and I took it out on the people around me, you know. That would be an immoral way to handle something, to handle the limitations that we have. And so it's funny. It's like, how do we know what it is that's like kind of motivating our behavior? Is it because we are at an unhealthy place and we need to change it? Or is it because we're at a limiting place and there's not really much we can do about it? And have we stepped up to the challenge or not? Because
It becomes your way of life.
Yes, a habit you're saying is that?
yeah, it can become a way of life. I think the challenges that we face can be a way of life, but this is where, like, if we took the Serenity Prayer and applied it, we would say, the Serenity Prayer says, grant me the serenity to change the things that I can and to accept the things that I can't change, right? So we can apply this to who we are and our personality and our skills that we have, and there may be some skills that I'm never going to have. And that's just who I am. I could try to change them, but I'm only going to go so far. You know, that's just who I am. So I can accept that. I can, in my Serenity Prayer, I can say, God, I really want to be like an opera singer. That's what I want. That's who I wish I were in my heart. But no matter how many lessons I take or how much practice that I put in, it ain't going to happen. I can enjoy trying and falling on my face, and I can make fun of myself, and I can have fun trying, but if I get to a place of acceptance, that can make me happy, it can make me at peace, it can eliminate the frustration in my life. But if I want to be an opera singer so bad, and I keep trying and I keep doing it, and I am determined against all odds, I am going to do this, I might find myself in a place where my frustration and my wheels spinning gets the best of me. And then maybe I find that I'm turning into a cranky person, and people don't really want to be around me, and I kind of like started treating people badly. And it's just because I haven't accepted the limitations that I have.
I love that, because I would love to cook. I hate cooking. And it's
Yeah.
the same thing. that I've just accepted the fact that I always said I did it so my kids wouldn't starve.
Yeah.
That was the end.
Yeah.
But then also, you said you're a good Christian woman.
Well, I'm a moral person, is what I said.
Yeah, but-
Well, I have an archetype of what a good Christian woman would
Yeah,
look like, and
well-
it's not always authentic.
It's not you.
But who has the definition besides Proverbs 31 about what a good
Oh,
woman
I've been that one.
is?
I think I like the word authenticity.
Yeah, I love
because
that.
I think authenticity says, I know what my skills are and what they're not. I know what I'm good at and what I'm not. I know when I do bad and I could do better. I know when I'm wrong. I know when I'm right.
I like out of balance.
you
But I'm
married
not
a
a balance.
cook.
Two
That's
different.
why.
The word balance is used. I like the word healthy and unhealthy. I like that. So we should be authentic, we should be healthy, we should be balanced for who we are, right? So we do have it can be a blessing to have a very clear understanding of what your limitations are. It can be a blessing. It can be freedom.
It is.
It can be freedom, because if we're living our life with this expectation of being something that we cannot be, it would be very, very frustrating. There are a lot of people that go through life and they're very, very frustrated because they're trying to be somebody that they're not. Now we still need to live lives where we're up to the challenge, because there are challenges that can make us better and that we can overcome, right? But then there are other challenges that really aren't challenges because they're impossibilities, because they're just not going to happen,
Anyone that you allow pronounce what you can or can't be, in other words, not to your choosing, you don't give it no heed if you turn to God, because with God, all things, and I mean all things that I've been told, you're never going to do this, you can't do this. Anyone who uses those words, anyone that puts the no word or ain't word or whatever it is about it, I discounted. So I was counted to be out of line with, out of harmony, which is another kind of a thing. But no one can pronounce a person fatal. It's what we are. We're human in a certain way, but we have that Spirit of God within ourselves, and it's what we choose to accept and listen within ourselves, and who we give our allegiance to. Do you give it to the doctor who pronounces somebody doing this certain way that there's nothing they can do? Or do you go to turn to God and says, no, all things are possible with you, so please, and ask with a sincere heart, it may be done.
Right.
I mean, that's
Maybe, I love that. Maybe done.
Yeah, this is where discernment is needed. This is where discernment is. I think this is like, so there's Paul's, maybe we can tie this in, Paul's teaching where Paul says all things are permissible, but not all things are beneficial. So there's the thing of like, we just have to figure out. I do think we have limitations. Now let me give you a story. So I was going through the process of getting authorization to minister within the United Church of Christ. So that means I was ordained at another place and I went to school at another place. So I had to go through this process where they say, you've got the classes that you need, and you've got the ordination that you need, and we had to go through psychological evaluations, and you have to describe your theology and your spiritual journey and sit in front of a committee and do all this stuff, right? So I was sitting with the conference minister in Atlanta, and he was asking me kind of where I felt I was called in ministry. And I started using this concept that Paul does of I become all things to all people. I said, that's what I want to do. And he said, just be aware you really can't be all things to all people. So there's the thing of like, there are some things, yes, I agree with what Jay is saying. There are some things that we call limitations, or we say this is a ceiling, And we're being called to go beyond that. But then there are other things that are just not going to be beneficial to us. So there's certain types of ministry that, another example. So a friend of mine works for some kind of nonprofit around Fort Pierce and sent me a text. Oh, I see that they need they're looking for 2 or 3 hospice chaplains positions. I just thought you should know about it. So I texted back and said, thank you for thinking of me. I'm not really wired for that. And then, she said, I understand. So now I can do it. I can do the work that's needed for pastoral care during the time of death for an individual person or for their family. And, I can dig deep and I can get those skills and put myself in that situation to minister when it's needed. Now, do I want to spend 40 plus hours a week and that's all I do? I could. All things are possible. It's possible. If I got to a place where like I needed to do that to get a paycheck and to put food on the table and keep a roof over my head, I could do it. But I'd go back to Paul's words. It's possible, it's permissible, but it may not be beneficial for the way that I'm wired. Because what would happen is I'd start getting depressed. I would not be happy. That being in those situations takes so much of my energy that like by the time I was done with the day, I would just have nothing left. I would probably get sick. So in that regard, I think there are some limitations, and maybe it's the limitation of what I really want to do with my life. And maybe that's just a matter of like, God says, you choose, I hear you loud and clear that usually or oftentimes we give up when we're not supposed to, or we see limitations instead of possibilities. And we're probably encouraged more to take up the challenge, accept the challenge, and ultimately the only way that we can really succeed in the biggest challenges of life is by turning those challenges over to God and saying, God, I need your power, your insight, and then God works through us and stuff can happen. But this is what I don't want. Some people will see, you use the term a Christian woman. Some may have a picture of what that is and say, this is what God wants me to be. And then as they're pursuing that picture of that Christian woman, what they may find is they're always falling on their face. They're always falling short. It's like, it looks like it's going to work. Nope, it's not going to work. And then what can happen in those kind of situations is a person can get very frustrated and just give up and say, well, I'm not even going to try anymore. The problem is, it wasn't that a person didn't try hard enough or want something. It's not that they didn't want something good. It's maybe because they were misinformed, that that's not what you're being called to be like. That picture is not who you're supposed to be. You're supposed to look like something that you haven't seen yet. And until you go through some kind of process, then maybe God says, here's a picture of what a Christian woman looks like, and then God throws a mirror in your face, right? And it's like, you see yourself? You see yourself? That's what a Christian woman looks like. Not like something else. You see all of her flaws? Yes, I do. Do you see all of her skills and all of her energy and all of her goodness? Yes, I see it. So, that's the other thing. So, it's
to apply this to if you don't mind. My problem is I've always been a person who doesn't like to cause others pain, and therefore I don't like conflict. I was told that at 25. But I've owned a business. I founded in 1973, and our whole family came work with me, and I taught school for 7 years. I am accustomed to conflict. But now we're having to make a decision in the farm whether I have to disagree with someone, and I'm feeling too much for them and not just letting them know what I think. I'm hemming and hawing, and finally I thought, well, maybe I'm just not supposed to do anything and let it see where it's supposed to go. But I think it's something I'm still supposed to be working on, is learning to not fear conflict, differences of opinions.
Yeah. That's a big one for a lot of people. It's a big one for a lot of people. Some of that, there's a lot of different things connected with that. Some of it is when we tell somebody something they don't want to hear. Maybe it's the truth. Maybe we tell somebody the truth, and we know they don't want to hear it. It's going to make them uncomfortable. What happens? One thing that makes that situation uncomfortable is that their reaction is going to be beyond our control, and we can't. If I can be nice to somebody, then I have a lot of influence on how they're reacting, right? If I can make them laugh, I've got some control over that. But if I share something and then there's the potential for them to react in a way that I don't want, maybe they're going to get mad, maybe they're going to yell at me, maybe they're going to threaten me. We don't have control over the emotions of other people. We can try our best to kind of frame the truth in a way. This is the whole share the truth in love or speak the truth in love. So this has to do with conflict.
Yeah, I think of it as like just the facts and not your feelings. I love that these people are in Illinois. I love that I have the distance of just email, but it takes away all the feelings.
Yeah,
but
well,
it's just
there's.
So hard to be.
But that's kind of a part of what we're supposed to. That's a part of maintaining relationships is getting involved with each other's emotions, and it's not comfortable. And maybe we can just say like it's not comfortable. They're making the right decision. Hopefully, we get to the place where it's like our heart and our mind and our experience and all that is kind of aligned and balanced. And we can say the things that need to be said, even though we know it's not going to be comfortable. I mean, there's things I don't like to do. There's certain phone calls I don't like to make. Some of them can be confrontational. There's something that needs to be said, and I avoid confrontation at all costs. I won't say at all costs, but I avoid it as if possible, But there might, I don't know.
I was life coaching with somebody the other day because I have the same issue, and we were talking about it, and even giving somebody your opinion when it's not like theirs is so hard.
Yeah.
But my coach said, once you do it, you build up that muscle.
Yeah.
And it gets easier to do.
Right.
Like sharing, even saying to somebody I didn't want to play cards was this big thing to me.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just like, it's okay.
Right.
But sharing, the more you share your opinion and how you really feel, the easier it gets.
Yeah.
Not that it's ever easy, but you're not as afraid inside to say what you need to say.
Well, if at 20 I was a 10 in fear, I'm probably more like 3 now, but I still don't like it.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's like
and you may find that there's certain things that you never like.
Yeah, I guess that's
it might be that that's not really something that can be overcome, and maybe it shouldn't be overcome. We're talking about public speaking on Sunday and things like that. So there is a fear of that. But in some ways, that's good. That's a good thing. Because if I completely didn't care what anybody thought, it kind of makes me a little psycho. Do you know what I'm saying? That means I have no awareness of the impact, or I have no empathy for my audience. And hopefully, if I'm standing in front of an audience, especially if it's done like in this kind of a setting, it needs to be empathetic. A sermon needs to be empathetic, because we're kind of going through this thing together, and we're aware of the challenges and the feelings we go through and all of that kind of a thing. If I come through and it's like, I don't really care what you think, and I'm going to say what I want, that's more like narcissistic. That's more self-centered. That's not empathetic at all. And there are a lot of very charismatic speakers that have no empathy, you know. My impulse is to say probably it's because they're just selling something.
Yes.
And they don't really care as long as you buy it. You know? So that's, I don't know, that's something that we don't,
But anyway, this was
want.
something I've been toying with, so I'm glad you all did the week, so I'm glad we were able to discuss it.
Let's see if we can actually finish. So we're going to start here. Whenever we do anything stupid, cruel, evil, or destructive to ourselves or to others, we are at that moment unconscious and unconscious of our identity. If we were fully conscious, we would never do it. Loving people are always highly conscious people. To rely on any drug or substance is to become unconscious. I always find it sad in counseling when people share that they have to have some wine or alcohol to make love to their wife or husband. In a very real way, that is a contradiction in terms, because we cannot actually be loving when we are unaware or not fully present. All right, so here's where we're looking at this connection between consciousness and conscience. And what this is saying is, the more conscious we are, we will automatically be more, or we will tend to be more conscientious, or we will be more aware of the moral decisions that we're making. If we are fully conscious, then we will find ourselves naturally living in love, because that's the place where I'm aware of myself, I'm aware of you, I'm aware of God. That in love, that's where our awareness is really alive. And as soon as I switch out of that mode and get into, I lose my consciousness, I lose my awareness of the people around me, my awareness of God. We can find ourselves kind of going through our day and we just forget. I forget who I am. And basically, I can live very reactionary. All right. So I'm almost. It's not like an animal, but I'm more like switching into like robotic mode. Somebody says something, we just kind of react. And somebody does something and we react. And we're not really thinking about the big picture. And we're not thinking about God. And we're not thinking about the people around and stuff like that. So oftentimes what we try to do, if we notice that we're being reactive, sometimes what we do to get out of that is we start to switch into these habits that make us feel something different, right? To make us feel better or something like that. The problem is that doesn't raise our awareness or our consciousness oftentimes. It's just kind of masking other feelings, and we're probably still reactionary or not really relating in a certain way.
You're saying though is that being fully conscious is actually harder, but maybe more fulfilling.
It's harder if we are consumed with our addictions.
Well, yeah, but if you're not even that, it's just that you're having to be so conscious and aware of so many things you might need to do and change and say, that if you were robotic, you just blurb out the same thing every time you meet somebody.
I think, and we can, with practice, we can figure the difference. I think we can be fully conscious, and it is really almost effortless. It just happens. On the other hand, when we're just starting it, it might be that we're really hyper-focused. And that can be, being hyper-focused can be exhausting, right? So like for example, if you're learning how to drive a stick shift for the first time, right? Remember at the beginning, it's like you're like the gas, the clutch, the brake, and the thing, and the shift. Oh, uphill, downhill, and you're like, or if you're learning how to play golf, it's like, there's like 50 different things to keep track of, It's like, oh, my back, oh, the swing, and my eyes, my focus, and, and all these. So at the beginning, when we're learning about consciousness, it might be that we feel this is very much about hyper-focus. But after a while, when you're driving so much, you're not even thinking about it. You're talking on the phone, you're singing to the radio, and you're not even thinking about it. It's a very natural thing. So now this being, and maybe the big difference is going to be a hyper-focus is still somewhat related to wanting to control, even though it's for good intentions. So we can still kind of want to, I'm going to be like the most loving person today. I really am, and we can kind of like be a little cuckoo about it, instead of just being a loving person means just kind of let it happen, let the love come out of you. It's not from you anyway. It's God's love that flows out of you, the real stuff. So when we're like that, then we do share love with one another naturally and effortlessly. But I don't know. And it's hard to recognize what it is that is like stopping us from sharing those things naturally. Let's keep going here. Oh, and let me. We've got a couple comments here. In this 12-step programs, we would be asked to do something. If it wasn't what we would feel called to do, the response would be, I do not have the willingness at this time. I think God's will is in there somewhere. All right, so this is Maggie's commenting on what we were talking about just a little bit ago, in terms of if we feel like we're kind of being challenged to do something that's beyond what we're willing to do. But like she said, one response might be, I don't have the willingness at this time.
Oh, I like that.
And that's not saying it'll never be there. It's just saying, like, I'm not feeling it at this moment. And we may even, our response can even be like, I'm not really feeling it at the moment. I hope that's okay, or something like that. Let's take on the next paragraph. To be fully conscious would be to love everything on some level and in some way, even our mistakes. To love is to fall into consciousness, which is contemplative, non-dualistic, and including everything, even the last enemy to be destroyed, which is death itself. That is why we absolutely must love. Didn't Jesus tell us that we must love even our enemies? When we can, on some level, even love our sins and imperfections, which are our enemies, we are fully conscious and fully liberated. God, who is universal consciousness itself, knows all things, absorbs all things, forgives all things for being what they are. If Jesus commands us to love our enemies, then we know that God must and will do the same. That what hope and joy that gives us all, it takes away all fear of admitting our wrongs. So this is a deep teaching, which takes a while to sink in. Loving everything on some level, even our mistakes. Being in full consciousness means it's non-dualistic. It includes everything. That includes our enemies. It includes death. It means to be okay with that. I remember thinking that, like in the Serenity Prayer, this term acceptance, I think acceptance is very close to faith, is very close to trust in God. If we can accept, just think about this. If you can fully accept everything in this life, do you know what kind of peace and joy you're going to have? Now, there are some things that we need to fight against. Our selfishness, protecting the innocent. There are those things, yes. But trusting that everything is going to be okay, and trusting that winning or losing fights is not really what it's all about. It's believing all things work together for good. And it means accepting the hardest things to accept. Accepting that we're going to die. Not easy. Maybe the hardest thing to accept. Accepting that there are people that come into this world as a new human being, and they come into a life of pain and rejection and tremendous challenge. That's hard to accept. But we can accept these things if we can understand that we can trust the God who is a part of all this.
And acceptance, does that mean you can still have feelings about them? Like sorrow? And
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
Still accept it and have to
Absolutely. Because look here, we would say being fully conscious and accepting would mean we experience love more deeply. But experiencing love more deeply means experiencing pain more deeply. Because that's what happens when we have love with other people, is we experience pain in ways that we wouldn't before. If somebody that we truly love more than life itself dies, it's going to be painful. It's going to be on par with the love that you had for them. So it's like if you had 10 pounds of love for the person, you're going to have 10 pounds of pain when they're gone. It's that there's that kind of relationship. I remember when Ian was born, the phrase "wearing my heart on my sleeve" meant something way different than it ever meant before, because that's how I felt. I felt this vulnerable, innocent little thing is in the world, and I have to do everything in my power to protect and to nurture and care for this person, And it means like it's another person. I can't always be with him. I can't always make the best decisions. It's like I'm guaranteed. It's like you see this person and you're like, you can just imagine the love that you're going to feel, that you're already feeling for this person. And I remember already feeling pain. I could already feel it, because it's like he's going to fall and skin his knee. Somebody's going to break his heart. He's going to have some loved one pass away. He's going to go through all these things, and it's going to break my heart to see my little boy go through all of these kind of things. So, yes, accepting the reality of love means accepting that, like, the flip side of the coin of love is the pain. And usually
Bye-bye.
You know,
I've got a demo appointment.
all right, take care.
Jay.
I'd rather be here.
You know, we would rather just have the good stuff, you know, and not have the bad stuff. But it's like, that's not the way it works. That's not the way it works. It doesn't mean it's always going to be painful. It doesn't mean you're always going to feel pain, but it means
Feel, but not
but the potential is there.
overpowering.
And the thing is if I'm thinking about the pain and I'm kind of trying to avoid it, then what's going to happen is I'm going to hold back my love.
I heard you doing that. Why are you, I mean, are you going along, you're walking along the street, oh, I might fall off the curb, or I might get hit by, why are you thinking that way? I'm serious.
And
No,
I agree
I'm
with
not.
curbs.
I'm not living an imaginary. I don't stay living in the imaginary possibilities. I just am fully open to the possibility of that happening. I mean, it's going to, and if I can be okay with it, then I won't hold back my love. If I'm not okay with it, if I don't want to think about it, and I don't want to face it, and I want to avoid the bad stuff at all costs, I'm going to hold back giving myself, because it's like every time we give love, every time we give out love, we run the risk. We run the risk
The opposite of-
that somebody might not love us back.
But the
Or
opposite
that
of
somebody's
would be
gonna say something.
Denial, pretending nothing will ever happen. I think denial is a big problem we haven't discussed.
If we trust God and we know everything ultimately is going to be okay, then maybe that will help us to kind of like let go a little bit and really live. You know, that's what because we don't want to live in fear,
Right.
because we can do that. You know, there's is it Munchausen's syndrome? There's a syndrome where a parent will make a child sick or keep a child sick in order to
I think you got it.
stay in the caregiving mode. So this is what it is. This is a really twisted way of somebody saying, like, I know it's going to be painful, so I'm just going to stay in this weird, painful place, you know?
Keeping the need rather than letting them be free.
Yeah. So there's accepting all things, absorbing all things, forgiving all things. If Jesus commands us to love our enemies, then we know that God must and God will do the same. I think that's something I don't hear talked about a lot. We hear the teaching of Jesus a lot, love your enemies. But how often do we think that God does that?
What I don't know about those three soldiers playing dice while Jesus is hanging on the cross and he forgives them. That's what comes to mind.
Yeah. It's and he knows why they are doing what they're doing, because they can't see what's really happening. Yeah. And well, we've got the book of wisdom here that ends this chapter. Yes, you love all that exists. You hold nothing of what you have made in abhorrence. For had you hated anything, you would not have formed it. And how? Had you not willed it, would a thing persist in being? How could it be conserved if not called forth by you? You spare all things because all things are yours. Lord, lover of life, you whose imperishable spirit who is in all.
We have a book of wisdom in our Bible?
Protestants don't, but Catholics do.
Oh.
And Richard Rohr's a Catholic, so he includes the book of wisdom.
I didn't think that sounded familiar.
Yeah. It's not for Protestants, no.
Yeah, but it's a nice verse.
I like it. Yeah, I like it. Yep. All right. That's step 10. This is actually kind of in line with where my thoughts are going for our Ash Wednesday service tonight.
The song that
Just kind of the stuff that we're talking about. When we open ourselves to love, it doesn't guarantee pain, but it really opens up the possibility. Being loving people is an act of vulnerability.
Oh, yeah.
It is an opening ourselves, and that's what makes it so beautiful. Is there's this openness and vulnerability that we share with one another.
Even the people we love, when we talk, they're not hearing the same words we're saying, and we're not understanding their words because our experiences are so opposite and different sometimes about some issues.
Yeah, we never fully connect. I think we do connect more with some people than with others, or at least we feel more understood or loved by some people than others. Just because, I don't know, it's more like a chemical reaction than anything. It's like
Well, I should feel my children and I talk about lots of things, but I still can't. They're 55 years older, and they still think when I say things, it's the word of God. Not that grandiose, but it's got to be obeyed, and I've not ever tried to teach them that.
Huh, interesting.
I'm still feeling like the parent.
Yeah. Well, part of the journey.
Yes.
Yeah, part of the journey. Send us out in the power of your Spirit, Lord. May our lives bring Jesus to the world. May each thought and word bring glory to your name. Send us out in your Spirit, Lord, we pray. Send us out in the power of